Prior to the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic of 2019, the world went through several pandemics that managed to affect globally. The best known is that of the Black Plague, which occurred in the mid of 14th century and was devastating due to its work which was caused by the Yersinia pestis bacterium. Then begin saying something similar had not happened since then. There were epidemics that were controlled, but this type of epidemic was not like that. As we know, the global outbreak of COVID-19 spread throughout the world, affecting all countries. It all started in December 2019 in Wuhan, China. And because of that, China began to warn the public of their nation to be very careful. So the news was released a few days later to the other countries. To do them, within China, public service strategies began to be implemented in which would hand washing, the use of masks or face masks, physical distancing, and also avoiding mass meetings in assemblies were mentioned. All this in order to prevent the spread of the virus. Confinement strategies and staying at home we also implement and as one of the best actions is in order to flatten the curve of confirmation of positive cases of said disease and thus control it. After this, the city of Bhutan declared for the first time the closure of schools and institutions, as well as the reduction of business hours during the 2nd of March. Seeing that even so the curves didn't go down, and that the virus had already reached other countries on March 11, 2020. The World Health Organization officially declares that it's a pandemic which is caused by the COVID-19 virus, with the transfer of the dates on March 18, 2020. The World Health Organization sets in motion what they are international clinical trials with robust data from around the world to find the most effective treatment for this virus. As a consequence of the high increase in the case rate and the declaration of a pandemic, it brought with economic effects on society throughout the world, resulting in jobs reductions, increased cost of basic food, decreased travel, in this case in-country tourists decreased, thus affecting the economy of the hotels, decreased demand for service which require proximity between the people. As a result, it brought with a massive layoff people from large companies because there was no production or demand, and several families had to have a very difficult time in order to survive in such an economic situation. Yes, at the state level, Quintana Roo, more than 20,000 businesses closed and 200,000 direct jobs as well as more than 400,000 indirect ones were really affected due to the suspension of activities. This in addition to occurring only in your state, also began to occur nationally and globally. Regarding the close of space, where there were large crowds of people, several companies start with the home office, which one of the alternatives that was implemented, so they did not stop some of their daily activities that they carried out as well help to take care of health of his work or its workers. Also for schools, distant classes were implemented with the help of e-learning tools, but all this was a real challenge for students because many of them found it very difficult to adapt and adjust to the new modality while others it was very easy for them. In addition to the fact that the pandemic affected families financially, it also had impacted people's mental and physical health. All this was due to the excessive coexistence with the family, and in several cases there was the bombardment of a very unreliable information in which false news and information appear, thus causing increased stress, fear, and anxiety. One factor that played a role in the pandemic was the psychological factors through which they play an important role in adherence to the public health measures, such as the acceptance of vaccination, and also in how people face the threat of infection, and they lost that he brought with him. There were people who developed maladaptive behaviors, emotional distress, and the defensive response. Whether they occurred more in the people who already had psychological problems and because of this made them vulnerable. That being said, these people with mental health disorders as well as a persistent substance use were increased risk of infection by COVID-19, thus causing them to have problems accessing COVID tests and as well as the treatment that was beginning to be given an equally increased risk of physical and psychological effects. Speaking now, the health system in Mexico, as also the case in most other countries, didn't have sufficient preparation to respond efficiently or in a timely manner to the crisis that began to emerge with the rise in the curve of positive cases to the COVID. In Mexico, before the pandemic, there has been a lack as such of, for a long time, in the budget distribution towards health service. Due to this has not had a good balance between programs and its affiliates towards health institutions. For this reason, when the pandemic was present, the health sector began to have problems with its supplies as well as with its facilities due to the fact that there were not enough beds in the ICU area such as respirators. And since the doctors in many hospitals had said oversaturation of patients, they had the difficult task of choosing between patients when in reality it should not be so. And this also forced them to open optimum hospitals to be able to care for people and trying in the same way to reduce the contagion curve. And this did not only happen in Mexico, it happened in the same way in the world due to the amount of contagion that was taking place. Because they were already beginning to take measures to reduce the contagion curve, they say were that way we was not much reductions, which is why the implementation of vaccines to the said virus began, where in just 10 months the vaccine for said virus was already a reality as such, and these were made by several companies, and this was a true achievement for medicine and science because it was the vaccine that has really been developed in so little time and has been accepted for us for use. All this was thanks to the research infrastructure that we have today and that facility to research time to be able to do it, complemented with the help of some vaccines for the other diseases that were already being carried out previously, and this helped further reduce research time. But this too, in addition to the infrastructure, was thanks to the joint work on the pharmaceutical companies. The regulatory authorities that approved the new medicine together with the logistics companies that manufacture inputs for packing and transporting said vaccines throughout the world. By already having said vaccine ready, vaccination campaigns began to be implemented to immunize people. First they began with health personnel, then went the elderly, then adults, then young people, and finally children. But many people did not agree with this vaccine due to the fact many did not think that the vaccine took so little time to carry out and they doubted its effect against the virus. In addition to the fact that controversies began in Mexico regarding the cost of said vaccine, but in the end it was not like that and it was completely free for the entire population. And thanks to the implementation of safe vaccines, together with the health measures, the contagion rate began to decrease as well as the curve, thus returning to normality for the world with new implications and a new mentality about the future. Conclusion. Personally, the pandemic was a class of points for the development and implementation of the new technologies that we have today. Many of people really a hard time had a heart, but thank God, in my case, it didn't go through economics, but in psychology, science on some occasion it stressed me a lot just being in my room and I was as spending a lot of time with my brother. It was a bit of hard stage but a lot of learning. Many people didn't think about what they were doing despite the fact that they were always reminded of the use the face mask as well and maintaining a healthy distance, but some did not respect it, and it brought with increased in cases such as the curve. All this due to because many people were not well informed and were really ignorant of the circumstances we were presenting. In addition, it was an achievement to obtain the vaccine in less than a year. Science normally takes years of research, but thanks to the technologies that we have today, it was possible to obtain in less time. If there were people who didn't agree, but everything did was to the spread of false information and many of the people began to believe it. It was possible to overcome this whole problem as well as assistance of vaccine for all people because there were still people who didn't know agree with said vaccine and today there were almost no reports of COVID case as was the case and to end of the pandemic that affect us. In effect, this pandemic was a very big challenge for hospitals and for medicine, but it leaves us to a lot to learn. Since the truth is that no one was prepared for this global health problem, and I also think that I hope that people realize that this disease is not only affects people who have a chronic condition or disease, diabetes, hypertension, etc., but also healthy people. This helped create emergency that it is a very important to take care of health, both physical and psychological, despite being a healthy person. Thank you.